Yeah, just want to say thank you to Tracy and the whole LGS team for the opportunity to be here. I remember I attended my first LGS family conference 11 years ago in 2011, and I'm always inspired by the togetherness of this community. So this guy here in the red shirt is the reason that I'm here. It's my nephew Danny. He was the third of four siblings, older sister and his two brothers. And Danny had his first seizure around the age of 2. He had his seizure while he was sleeping. Experience many of you have had yourselves with your kids. And he was pretty well controlled by medication for the next 2.5 years. He only had 4 seizures that his parents witnessed, all of them during sleep. And it was December of 2009 when he went to a kind of a routine visit with his neurologist on a Tuesday morning. And then the following Saturday, so 4 days later, his mom found him unresponsive in his bottom bunk bed. And the first time that his parents had heard the term SUDEP was on his death certificate. And so, that lack of disclosure about this risk of SUDEP is something that we've come to learn is all too common. And that's a big part of why his parents, Mike and Marianne, decided to start the Danny Did Foundation. So this is the movement that they began in 2010, and their motivation was simply to try to help other parents to avoid the same tragedy that they experienced and to fill some gaps in education and communication that took place when Danny had epilepsy. So this is how Danny lives on now in the world. And some people ask about the name of our organization. That comes from the last line of his obituary, which my brother Mike wrote, and it read, "Please go and enjoy your life, Danny did." And so, as the LGS community knows too well, there are a lot of risks that come with epilepsy, risks related to falls, injuries, swimming, bathing, head trauma, and typically parents are educated about the ways to minimize those risks. But our sad reality is there's also the case, the risk of mortality in epilepsy, and that has touched this community too many times. The mortality in epilepsy that affected us, as I mentioned, was SUDEP, and so we advocate for honest and open dialogue between doctors and caregivers about the risks that accompany epilepsy. And all we ask is that SUDEP and mortality are not left out of that conversation. So there are examples of many other disease states where the patient community, the caregiver community is informed by a doctor about all the possible outcomes, and that empowers their decision-making as they treat their loved one. So that's what we ask for and hope for and know that you all deserve as parents, is that we're empowered with information that helps us to keep our kids more safe. So when we think about safety at Danny Did, devices are a big area of focus for us. We know that devices aren't the whole plan, but they can be part of the plan. And so we talk about the benefits to patients and caregivers. That's our primary concern and point of emphasis when we think about devices. So you think about all those times that you may have been in the hospital and there's monitoring in that setting. No one would want a seizure to go undetected in the hospital, and then you leave the hospital and you're on your own. But we really believe that the monitoring and the intervention is just as important outside the hospital. So that idea of early intervention, that someone can become present to hopefully instigate a better outcome, whether that's through the use of rescue medications or just taking all the steps that you all are too familiar with taking if you're there to be present. So, and looking through this slide, just talking about, seizure tracking, which Rob talked about, and the fact that many families and caregivers are already using devices. So engaging them where they are and putting that to use. I talked about the idea of intervention and whether that's repositioning or stimulation that could help to provide a better outcome. And then, a huge talking point with the families that we interact with on a daily and weekly basis is just this anxiety that goes with seizures and waiting for the next one. And especially when those seizures happen during sleep like they did for Danny. And then on the other side of it is just the independence that can be gained from having a little bit more peace of mind for mom or dad, and relieving some of that anxiety. We also think it's really important to talk about what doctors, providers can benefit from when it comes to seizures as well. They also will want timely intervention when a seizure happens. They gain from seizure tracking and knowing about how many seizures are taking place. And hopefully that can lead to more optimized medications, and that in turn hopefully can reduce the risk of SUDEP. We don't want to pretend like these are perfect solutions as they stand right now. There's shortcomings for sure. The stage is still in its relative early stages, but we do envision a future when there's a diagnosis of epilepsy, or maybe as even specific as a diagnosis of LGS, and the provider talks about different options that can be possible for the caregiver, just as there might be an analogy with, an inhaler for asthma or other disease states where there's equipment and tools that are immediately talked about as part of the care plan. So with LGS, obviously there's always more than one type of seizure that's present, and that is one key gap here that we're facing when we talk about the devices that are available today. There's nothing really that detects multiple seizure types with a sensitivity and specificity that doctors would want in order to recommend it to a caregiver or to a patient. So that's something that we hope is going to change with what's in the pipeline. Obviously, the last one on this list is access. Even the FDA-approved product, which I'll talk about in a minute, has not found any widespread success in terms of reimbursement or coverage. So that is something that is a part of what we're trying to move forward at the Danny Did Foundation. So the core of what we do at Danny Did is just to counsel parents who have questions about devices. And we've talked to many LGS families and just helping them think through some common sense considerations. We're not here to recommend a specific product or endorse one over the other, but really just to let caregivers know what their options are. A lot of our time is spent trying to align the hopes and expectations of a caregiver with the reality of what a product can do or doesn't do. Tracy mentioned that Savannah went through 26 treatments before she found what worked for them. So we understand how badly the desperation can be when families come to us and they want something to work. And the scenario that I think is the worst case is when a family feels let down after having solution put into place because there wasn't the right alignment between their situation and what the system is able to do. So really having that honest look at, what is the scenario at home and what is the system professed to do. So I'm going to briefly talk through some of the non-invasive systems that are available now. This list is not exhaustive. It's some of the products that can be accessed right now. There's much more in development. And this will not include implanted technologies like VNS or RNS. So the first one I'll mention is called the Mfit. It's not a wearable. It's a very thin device that goes between the mattress and the box spring. This is a system that is for monitoring during sleep, and it's looking for certain types of repetitive movements that can be detected on the surface of the mattress. For this product, the alert occurs in the room of the user, so it's important to note that in case there's a scenario where that could scare the user or be a detriment in some kind. And they have workarounds around that, but typically as it's sent in its standard form, the alert goes in the room of the user. This next one is the Inspire app by a company called Smart Monitor. This, as you can see, is a wristwatch-based system. Their app is compatible with iOS or Apple products. This is looking for movement, and it sends alerts to pre-programmed caregivers through text message or phone call. Those can include the GPS location of the user in case they're away from their caregiver or whoever is going to be alerted. The Embrace 2 watch is one that many of you are probably familiar with because in 2018, this device was cleared by the FDA for seizure monitoring and to detect generalized tonic-clonic seizures. So while their indication is for that specifically, this system does measure more than movement. This was mentioned earlier in a talk today. It's measuring about a dozen parameters, EDA being one of them, other physiological changes that can happen before, during, or right after a seizure. So a key point for this system is that it's validated at actually detecting seizure events, not just movement events. The next one I'll mention is called the Sami, or Sleep Activity Monitor. This is a Colorado-based company. As you can see, it's video-based movement. It features a camera that is mounted on the wall, very similar to a baby monitor and trained on the person who's sleeping. And then there's a second component, an iOS device, that would be in the caregiver's bedroom. And so you can get that live look into the bedroom at any point, just like you would with a baby monitor. But in addition, if there is a alert detected, then there's an audible sound that comes in through the caregiver's room, and at that point the system would begin to record. So one feature that a lot of parents appreciate about this is the ability to share video with a provider and show them a firsthand look at exactly how the seizure is presenting. The next system I'll mention is called Miku. This product was recently featured at the Epilepsy Pipeline Conference. They were the winner of the 2021 Shark Tank competition, which is hosted by the Epilepsy Foundation. This is a video monitor based as well. It's not a wearable. It's monitoring for breathing using radar technology, and it features different customizable alerts. There are trials underway at Boston Children's Hospital to try to retrofit this technology to be more applicable for detecting seizures specifically, and that's something that we're very excited about. This next one, you all are probably very familiar with. Pulse oximeters are medical devices that typically attach to the fingertip or toe to measure heart rate and blood oxygen percentage. While these aren't designed or manufactured to detect seizures, they do have applicable monitoring and alarm sounding functions that can be useful for some who experience seizures. One company that makes these among many is called Masimo. You can learn more about their product at our website, which is dannydid.org. And then lastly, I'll close with this slide of lower tech safety products that can have a big impact. The parent survey that Tracy talked about put safety, at the top of the list as a huge priority for the LGS community. So we want to promote the availability of some of these products to the epilepsy community. You can see here there's one that's a harness device that's used for drop seizures. There's a anti-suffocation pillow. There's something called the shower belt that is for obviously when people are showering. So there's different safety products that are kind of low tech, easy to use, but that can be very meaningful in helping to keep our loved ones safe. So those are mentioned on our website as well. Where we find, I guess, the most hope in this space is in the pipeline. What's coming next. You talk about systems that can alert to a range of seizure types, not just movement. Obviously, that would be really important to, I think, a lot of you in this room here today. Systems that learn over time, that learn from the user and become more accurate over time. This is, Tracy made a comment earlier, it can be made better. I think this is what we hope for in the pipeline here. But it's really going to take us as a parent community to move and prod these, to prod this space forward. I'll use an example of a company called Eyes as one that's in the pipeline. That's eye tracking software that's going to detect different kinds of seizures than most products attempt to detect today. So we're encouraged. We actively track what's coming in the pipeline. We hear from a lot of startups in this space who want to know what the parent perspective is, what are the features that are most important. And sometimes we have the opportunity to connect these companies with the parent community to give direct feedback. So if you're ever interested in doing something like that, we'd love to be in touch and put your feedback to work. So we talk about all of these things that are out there or that are coming, and unfortunately, access is an issue. Even for the product that's FDA approved, within the epilepsy space, there is not much coverage when it comes to seizure monitoring devices. So that's kind of our core program, is to provide these direct grants to families who have identified a system that they think can be useful for their situation, and to get that into place in their homes. So we have a very straightforward process, or I hope it's straightforward, where a family can apply for a grant. We have a conversation to kind of talk through the specifics and make sure there's as much alignment as we can possibly forecast before they make the leap and go for it. And then the product is sent directly from the manufacturer to the family. So Danny Did's role is really to try to counsel on what are your options, what's out there, what's available, thinking through these considerations that are important to talk about and think about, and then ultimately being that funding bridge that gets these systems into place. And we've done that across 14 countries, and we know that our solution, what we do, is just a stopgap. It's not really the ultimate solution, but for the time being, it's what we have to contribute to the community. So I know that I'm between everybody and the break, so I won't belabor much longer. But I just do want to make the comment that we really appreciate all of you as caregivers, all that you do. You're heroes to us. We admire your strength and your courage, your dedication, and we're here to help. So if we can ever be of assistance to you guys or people that you know, please encourage them to reach out.
Are there any questions? We definitely have time for questions right up here in front.
What would be your top recommendation for tonic seizures out of the existing devices?
I would say let's talk kind of offline, and maybe I can hear a little bit more about your scenario at home. Unfortunately, there's, I think, more in the pipeline than there is available in that regard. And so I can maybe give a preview of some of the things that have us excited that are coming. I wish I had more to say.
There's a question up here on the front. Any other questions? Just raise your hand high. Boy, this is like, whoo. I'm innocent. On June 10th, I was in my room doing nothing.
Hi, Tom. I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you to the Danny Did Foundation. As a caregiver, I have a 14-year-old daughter with epilepsy, but I also work in the epilepsy field for my full-time role. And the movement and the spirit and pushing people together, I think is such a missing space in the LGS community. We have to advocate. My biggest concern is that we have not gotten insurance or policy, government policy, to get behind seizure rescue and seizure detection like other communities have been able to get behind things. And it's such an important thing that we really need to pull together to advocate better for our children and adults in the community, because it's just a shame that we can't get any sort of DME coverage for these products. And I hope that we continue to advocate, and I think it's such an important thing that the LGS Foundation can start doing too, to help, mutually help this move along better, especially with all these new products coming. That is such an important part, because like you said, the access, if it's great if they're making this technology, but if nobody can afford to use it, or they're not going to use it in schools or residential places, how is that really going to help our population? Yeah. So it's such an important part of that. So, yeah. But I want to thank you for everything your organization has done.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's an important comment, and something that I think we're trying to spend more time to move forward as advocates. I know there was a session at the Epilepsy Pipeline Conference 2 weeks ago on this very topic, and how can we as advocates help move this forward. I think part of it has to do with getting the professional societies in our community more involved in the device movement, and kind of stating the necessity and the value. Obviously, part of it is us as parents making that clear too, and then getting the payers and the right people to the table and figuring out solutions is all very important.
And I'll just add really quickly, we do have a patient assistance program at the LGS Foundation, and instead of reinventing the wheel, we partner with the Danny Did Foundation to fund devices for families. So if you come tomorrow morning, you will hear not only about our patient assistance program and our partnership with Danny Did, but also about our Advocates for LGS, a program which we're starting to build, because I agree we need to be doing more advocacy. So we do have a break right now, but I know that Tom will stick around for questions. So let's give him a round of applause. Tom, thank you so much.